Today we're going to be looking at one of the most powerful gaming laptops currently out on the market, and that is the Lenovo Legion 5i Pro. It's the perfect match of CPU and GPU hardware, a great screen, and a really nice design. But I'm not going to go into the super technical details that some other videos do on this laptop. Of course, I'll give you guys an overview of the performance, the port selection, the battery life, the overall design, and just functionality of this machine. But I really want to give you guys an overview of how this thing is to use day in and day out, and really where you're going to get the best usage out of a PC like this. We'll also go through some comparable laptops that are both similarly priced and similarly spec'd, and really see where this Lenovo Legion fits in and who should go out and buy it, and if you should go out and buy it. But before we jump into performance, let's talk design of the 5i Pro. The 16-inch form factor is a really nice size, giving you kind of enough screen space and resolution for gaming, as well as enough of a footprint for a nice keyboard and trackpad layout. But it's also a really well-constructed chassis and really well laid out when it comes to the cooling and just the overall rigidity and sturdiness of this chassis. There's no deck flex. You're not going to really have to worry about lugging this thing around wherever you're trying to game. And it's also pretty thin for the amount of performance that we're soon to talk about that's being packed in this machine. Overall, not too thick of a machine, and it also doesn't weigh too much either, coming in at right around 5.5 pounds. So for the amount of cooling that has to be done and all of the hardware that's in this machine in a 16-inch form factor, 5.5 pounds really isn't that much weight for a machine like this. But now let's jump into the performance of the 5i Pro, which is definitely going to impress. And this laptop isn't just powerful, it's probably more powerful than the desktop behind me. It has some amazing specs with an i7-12700H from Intel. It's 14 cores and 20 threads of pure 12th gen performance on this bad boy. Way outperforms the 9900K that is in my desktop. But where it might fall a little bit short of the desktop is that thing has a 3080 Ti, but this thing isn't too far behind with a 3070 Ti. So you have a mobile 3070 Ti with 8 gigs of VRAM, no slouch when it comes to gaming performance, which we'll take a look at shortly. And in combination with the i7-12700H, you can not only game on this machine, but of course do things like photo editing, video editing, other performance-oriented tasks that require a little bit more CPU horsepower. And it's not just the CPU and GPU that are performance-oriented. You also get 16 gigs of user upgradable and replaceable memory, along with 2 slots for PCIe Gen 4 SSDs. This one's populated with a single 500 gigabyte SSD, but this thing is super quick, super fast, and makes transferring files and just downloading games a breeze. And there's other really nice specs. It comes with Wi-Fi 6E, gigabit Ethernet on board, along with a 78 watt hour battery, but it also comes with a 300 watt charging brick to really get the most performance out of this laptop when it's plugged in, docked, and really being used as almost a desktop replacement. We'll put that desktop replacement theory to the test in the next video to see if this laptop can actually replace my full-blown $3,000 gaming desktop. And it's not just the internals that are performance focused. You also have a great screen to go along with them. At 2560 by 1600, the 16-inch IPS display on the 5i Pro is perfect for gaming. It also peaks out at 500 nits, allowing for HDR400 experience. And at 165 Hz refresh rate, you're getting a top-of-the-line gaming experience that the 3070 Ti and 12700 are able to deliver. And when it comes to color accuracy, although it might not be the most color accurate panel, it does give you 100% sRGB coverage, which should be perfect for gaming and even a little bit of video editing or photo editing along the side. And it doesn't just stop there. The port selection on the 5i Pro is also top-notch. You have 3 USB type A ports, 1 on the side and 2 in the back. You also have 3 USB type C ports, 2 on the side and 1 on the back. You also get gigabit Ethernet, a full-size HDMI, a microphone headphone combo jack, And then of course the power connector to really get all 300 watts of power into this PC. So it would have been nice, of course, to have like USB Type-C charging, but with the amount of power that has to be pumped into this machine, there is the proprietary Lenovo connector when it comes to the power supply. But overall, I'm not really concerned about it. You're going to be having to lug around a 300 watt adapter. You're not going to be able to kind of utilize another power supply from a different machine with this guy anyways. So the proprietary connection isn't really too big of a hassle. And I can't forget about the keyboard. It's really well spaced out on this 16-inch chassis, and just overall is a really nice typing experience as well as gaming experience on the 5i Pro. But there are a few places where this machine does fall short, and the two big ones are the touchpad. I mean, again, it's a gaming laptop, so you're going to be using a mouse with this thing in the majority of situations, so it's not too big of a deal, but it is a little bit small, most likely a compromise to give you a really nice keyboard setup. And the other place that's lacking a little bit is when it comes to the webcam. 720p, I really would have liked to see 1080p. Here's a quick test of the webcam setup and microphone setup so you guys can get an idea of how it sounds and looks as well. So here you go. Here is a quick test of the onboard camera and microphone on the 5i Pro. So overall, it's not the best webcam setup, but it'll do in the majority of situations, whether it's like a video call or anything else that you might be using it for. And a quick test of the speakers as well.
Walk, see, here, I should celebrate, think I could change my mind, maybe elevate. Living life, every day, late at night, not okay.
So now that we've gotten all of the technical specifications and design out of the way, let's jump into what all of you guys want to know, which is how does this thing perform and what is like the user experience of the 5i Pro, both when it comes to gaming, but also just day-to-day usage of this machine. So when it comes to the gaming experience, you have a lot of actual like control over the software from Lenovo itself. So through Lenovo Vantage, which is their software, you have a lot of control over the hardware of both the CPU and the GPU. So when it comes to actually choosing a mode for the computer itself, you have performance mode, which can only be applied when the PC is plugged in. You have balanced mode and you have quiet mode. And as you keep stepping down, you lose clocks on the CPU, which is of course going to then cause less power usage. So it's going to reduce the amount of power, reduce the amount of heat output, and of course reduce the fan noise. So it'll keep it quieter, but you'll also get less performance. So all of these tests are going to be run with performance mode on with the PC plugged in. Typically you can get around 5 hours of battery life on this PC without being plugged in, but with gaming you're probably only going to look at like an hour to 2 hours of charge. You also have GPU overclocking just as a toggle switch, so it'll automatically apply a bump on both the GPU megahertz, on the core clock megahertz, as well as the VRAM megahertz. So you're going up 100 megahertz on the GPU clock and then up 200 megahertz on the VRAM. You also then have some settings about GPU working mode, so you can select hybrid, which will be controlled by the computer of whether it's using the iGPU or the dedicated 3070 Ti. But there's a lot of other features within this software. You can look at the power capabilities of the machine. You can see how much power is left, how many charge cycles it's gone through, and the life of the battery. But let's jump into some games, starting with one of the lighter titles, which is Valorant. And this game is one that really gives us an idea of how well the system is working from the GPU side, because this is where we're going to see our highest FPS. So on average, we were looking at over 250 FPS in Valorant, which we'll show you very, very shortly. But pretty much this game and the rest of the titles that I'm going to show you ran extremely well on the Lenovo Legion 5i Pro.
Healer down. Eyes down.
So as you can see, extremely high FPS, CPU render time and GPU render time is very, very close together. So like 2 milliseconds for the CPU, 1 millisecond for the GPU. So our CPU is definitely going to be throttling, of course, our 3070 Ti. And if we jump over to Apex Legends, we're looking at right around like 120 to 130 FPS on average, with the settings cranked up on high within Apex Legends. So, I mean, this is a game that is very much requiring you to play at high FPS, and you want to take full advantage of that 165 hertz refresh rate. And that's what we're doing here. And we could definitely turn these settings down to like medium or just a mixture of medium, low, and high, depending on what you're really looking for. And you're gonna see some really, really high average FPS numbers within these games. Now, the cooling solution of the 5i Pro definitely got put to the test in this gaming session. We did see around 100 C on the CPU, which did thermal throttle and caused us to lose some clocks on the CPU, dropping us from around like 4300, 4400 megahertz down to around 4100 megahertz throughout most of the gaming session. And we also did see the GPU hit around 81 to 84 C, peaking out around like 87 degrees Celsius. So overall, not too bad, but if we did get a little bit more cooling performance in that thermal mode, we could see even higher FPS and some higher performance in a lot of these titles. And if we jump over to a game that's seen a lot less love lately, but is still a pretty demanding game to run in Halo Infinite, we're looking at right around like 90 FPS on average, like 80 to 90 FPS depending on the map. And that is very, very much a playable experience on this PC. I mean, you could even jack those settings up. So that was on all high. You could definitely lower the settings and get higher FPS within this game in order to take full advantage of that 165 hertz. And you can also play this game in HDR if you wanted to take full experience or take full advantage of that HDR capability of the display on the 5i Pro. And of course, with all of that performance comes a pretty high price tag. So the 3070 Ti version of the Lenovo Legion 5i Pro comes in right around $2,600 US. That is the exact same specs as the machine you see next to me, but it also comes with 32 gigs instead of 16 gigs of DDR5 4800 megahertz memory, as well as two 1 terabyte SSDs versus the single 500 gig SSD that's in this machine. So this one's probably right around a $2,100 or $2,200 option from Lenovo. I'll have links down in the description where you can actually go ahead and buy this laptop if you are interested at the end of the video. So you can definitely check that out in the description. So of course the 5i performs amazingly with the 12700H and the 3070 Ti. But is it priced right for that performance? You have the Acer Predator Helios 300, which is a 15.6 inch QHD display laptop with, again, a 3070 Ti and the i7 12700H, but you also get a 1 terabyte SSD and 16 gigs of RAM. But where that thing falls short is definitely on the port selection and just overall design and sleekness compared to the 5i Pro. You have a much bigger bottom bezel on the screen, again, less ports, which is always a must-have when it comes to a gaming laptop. But the Acer is on sale for $1,800, so it really just kind of depends. They're very similarly spec'd. This one does have some really, really nice features when it comes to port selection, overall design, slimmer bezels, just overall a cleaner and sleeker look with the 5i Pro. So it's kind of up to the user in that situation. They're going to perform similarly. You're going to get a little bit more features and capabilities out of the 5i Pro. So it's really up to you guys. Overall, this is 100% a laptop I would recommend to go out and buy tomorrow. It has amazing performance when it comes to the internals. You're going to get super fast transfers, both over Wi-Fi 6E and then onto that PCIe Gen 4 SSD. The screen is great. The design looks amazing. Overall, this is something that if you're looking to buy a new laptop, especially a high performance gaming laptop, this is one that you should definitely keep an eye on and definitely keep it on your short list. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, get subscribed to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.